Hello, everyone, and good afternoon. This is your covalent compound naming set of notes. Note that there are some similarities between ionic naming and covalent naming that we'll discuss here. The main similarities is that in the order of the chemical formula, you still are listing out the elements. You're still changing the ending of the second element to IDE. The difference in covalent naming is that you add prefixes to each of the element names that are part of the compound so that you know which or how much of each element you have. In ionic names, things are very straightforward because there's only one possible combination of the two ions because, of course, ionic compounds have to be neutral, and we're going to be having the lowest possible combination of those two elements be our chemical formula. For covalent compounds, however, because they're single, double, triple, and coordinate covalent bonding, there's lots of different combinations two elements can have to be a compound of those two elements. For example, oxygen and carbon, when bonded together, results in multiple types of compounds. Two easy examples of that is CO2 and CO. Both are different compounds. But you can't call them both the same thing because they're very different compounds. One is something you breathe and breathe out just fine, and the other thing is actually a poisonous gas that interferes with your blood's ability to carry oxygen. You can't call them both carbon dioxide because they do different things. This is your copy of the prefixes we use in covalent naming or molecular naming. Note mono means 1, di is 2, tri is 3, tetra 4, penta 5, hexa 6, hepta 7, octa 8, nona 9, deca 10. These are the rules, the kind of set rules we're going to be using for binary covalent naming. The first rule, writing the names of the elements in order listed in the formula. Identify what those are, write them down. You will need to use the pencil if you do this method because, of course, you are going to be making changes. The second thing you need to do is you need to add prefixes for each of the elements. Prefixes to indicate how many of each element there is. It goes in the front of the element. That's what number of that element that there is. If there's just one atom on the first element, however, you do not put the prefix mono. If there's 2, 3, 4 of the first element listed, you do put the prefix. You need to put the prefix if it's anything but 1. And for the second element listed, you put the prefix no matter how many there are. 1, 2, 3, it doesn't matter. You put the prefix always on the second element. Another rule for prefixes that you should be aware of is that the vowels at the end of the prefixes are sometimes dropped if you have an element that begins with a vowel. Usually oxygen is where we're talking about. Tetra, mono, penta, we drop the A when we put those in front of the oxygen or in front of the oxide, giving you, instead of monooxide, monoxide, instead of pentaoxide, pentoxide, and instead of tetraoxide, tetroxide. Now for di and tri, even though there's 2 vowels, we're going to keep the I, so we don't have doxide, troxide, it's dioxide, trioxide. Iodine also usually keeps that I on the di and tri, even though it's a double I. So it's triiodide and diiodide, not triiodide, not diiodide. The last thing you need to do for your naming of molecular compounds is you need to put an IDE ending on the second element, just like you did with the ionic name, with the ionic naming on the second element. Following these guidelines, CO is named carbon monoxide and CO2 is named carbon dioxide. The poisonous one is the carbon monoxide. Carbon dioxide isn't it's not really something you breathe, but it's not being absorbed constantly. CO is absorbed and takes the place of oxygen, which is why it's considered toxic or poisonous. Okay, we're not going to do the naming, and that's going to conclude our covalent naming notes. Have a great day, and see you tomorrow.